Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into the single most powerful and personal story you will ever encounter. And here's the thing, it's the one you tell yourself about yourself every single day. So let's start with a question. Have you ever wondered why a story like Star Wars just feels so timeless? I mean, for decades, right? This story about a farm boy, a princess, and a road has captured the imagination of millions. So what is it? Why does it have such a powerful, lasting grip on us? Well, the answer isn't really about the cool spaceships and the lightsabers. It's because it follows a blueprint, one that's wired deep, deep inside the human mind. George Lucas actually tapped into this ancient, universal pattern of storytelling. It's like a psychological roadmap that our brains are just built to recognize and respond to. And here's the really cool part. In this explainer, we're going to show you how you, yes, you, use that exact same blueprint every single day. You use it to tell the most important story of all, your own. It's not just for heroes in a galaxy far, far away. It's the tool you're using, probably without even thinking about it, to make sense of your own life. Okay, so first things first. Before we get to your personal story, let's back up a bit and look at the big picture. Why do we even crave stories in the first place? What is this universal blueprint all about? Our brains absolutely love stories, and for some very good reasons. For our earliest ancestors, this wasn't just entertainment, it was a critical survival skill. I mean, before writing, stories were how you pass down everything: how to hunt, what's right and wrong, the history of your tribe, and a narrative with its connective thread is way easier to remember than a boring list of facts. Stories also let us do mental rehearsals for situations we haven't faced yet, and, maybe most importantly, they build social bonds. They create empathy and hold the group together. Seriously, it's an evolutionary advantage. So this guy, the mythologist Joseph Campbell, he did something incredible. He studied myths from all over the world, from totally different cultures, and he found this stunning pattern. He realized that underneath all the different details, the different gods, the different settings, so many of these stories were telling the exact same fundamental tale. He gave it a name, the monomyth, which we now know as the hero's journey. And the basic arc is really a cycle of transformation, broken down into three acts. First, you've got the departure. The hero gets called to adventure and leaves their normal everyday world. Then comes the initiation. This is where they face all the tests, they find allies, and they confront their biggest fear. And finally, you have the return. The hero comes back home, but they're transformed, and they have some reward or new wisdom to share. I mean, Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter, Frodo Baggins, they all walk this exact same path. Alright, so now that we've got the big, epic blueprint down, let's bring it all back home. Let's talk about the story of you and what psychologists call narrative identity. So this is your narrative identity. It's this internalized, always evolving story of who you are. It's not just a scrapbook of memories. It's more like a movie that you're constantly editing. You're taking all the different scenes of your life, the good, the bad, the confusing, and weaving them together to create a story that makes sense, one that gives you a sense of unity and purpose. And this is where it gets really powerful. In this story, you play all three roles. You're the main character, the one experiencing all the events. You're the narrator, choosing how to tell the story and what to emphasize. And you're the author, with the power to revise the manuscript as you go. This lines up perfectly with what the psychologist Jerome Bruner talked about. He said we basically have two modes of thought. One is the paradigmatic mode. That's all about logic, facts, arguments. Think of a scientific proof. The goal is to prove something is true. But then there's the narrative mode. This one is all about meaning, human experience, and stories. The goal here isn't to be factually perfect, it's to create believability and meaning. And your life story? It lives right in that narrative mode. Okay, so if we're all authors telling the story of ourselves, how do we build these stories? What are the nuts and bolts? What makes a life story actually hang together and feel real? Well, any good story needs structure, or what researchers call coherence, and we develop it in stages. First, as kids, we learn temporal coherence, just putting events in the right order. This happened, then that happened. Then we develop causal coherence, linking things with cause and effect. This happened because that happened. As we get older, we start seeing the bigger picture, thematic coherence, identifying an overall theme or lesson. And finally, all of this is shaped by our cultural coherence, the kinds of story formats that are common in our culture. So, beyond the structure, our stories have themes, kind of like genres. You might have an agency story, which is the I am in control story, or maybe a communion story, the we are in this together story. But two of the most fascinating themes that researchers look at are redemption, the comeback story, and its opposite, contamination, the good to bad story. So let's look at a perfect example of a redemption sequence. Someone says this: I lost my job and it was devastating, but it forced me to go back to school, and now I have a career I truly love. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. You see that? A clearly negative event is transformed into a positive outcome. It's the classic comeback story. And now, in stark contrast, here's a contamination sequence. Someone might say, I had a wonderful marriage and a great career. Then the accident happened, and I've never been able to get back to that happy place. Everything has been tainted by it. Here, a positive beginning is spoiled or contaminated by a negative event that follows, and the whole memory just feels tainted. So this is where it all comes together. This is why it matters. Whether you frame your life's challenges as redemption or contamination isn't just a storytelling preference. It is a profound and measurable impact on your life. And the research on this is crystal clear. People who tend to frame negative events as redemption stories consistently report higher levels of well-being and happiness. The ability to find meaning and positive outcomes from suffering is one of the strongest predictors of mental health. The story we tell literally shapes the life we experience. And this isn't just an abstract theory. It has amazing real-world applications. In therapy, it's used to help people literally re-author damaging life stories. In medicine, doctors who listen to a patient's story can provide much more effective care. It's a tool for teaching, for healing, and even for resolving conflicts by helping people share their stories and build empathy. And that really is the ultimate takeaway here. Your personal narrative isn't just a passive recording of your past. It's an active, creative force. The story you construct about your life can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, for better or for worse, because you are the author. So that's the question we'll leave you with. What story are you writing? Is it a story of redemption, of agency, of connection? Because the pen is in your hand and the next chapter is waiting to be written.